Tom Simpson, cycling. On July 13th, 1967, 29-year-old Tom Simpson was climbing Mont Ventoux in the 13th stage of the Tour de France, the most feared mountain in professional cycling, a 21-kilometer ascent through bleached white limestone above the tree line, with no shade temperatures reaching 40 degrees Celsius, and a road surface that absorbed and radiated the heat back upward like an open oven. Simpson was the most celebrated British cyclist of his generation, world road race champion in 1965, the first British rider to wear the yellow jersey. He should not have been racing. 3 days earlier, he had been vomiting and suffering from severe diarrhea, and his team doctor had urged him to withdraw. His personal manager had urged him to stay in. Near the summit, Simpson began weaving across the road, his body no longer obeying clear instructions from his mind. He toppled from his bike. Spectators set him back on it. He asked them to. He rode another 100 meters and collapsed again. He was unconscious before he hit the road. A police helicopter airlifted him to a hospital in Avignon, where he was pronounced dead at 5:40 in the afternoon. The postmortem found 2 empty tubes of amphetamine in his jersey pocket, and a third that was half full. Amphetamines suppress the brain's ability to register exhaustion, which means Simpson had been pushing far beyond what his body could sustain without receiving any of the warning signals that would have slowed him down. Combined with dehydration from the diarrhea alcohol he had consumed near the base of the mountain and the 40-degree heat, the drug had effectively disabled the one system capable of telling him to stop. His last recorded words were spoken to the spectators, who set him back on his bicycle after the first collapse. He told them to put him back on. They did. Andrés Escobar, soccer. On June 22, 1994, Colombian defender Andrés Escobar stretched to intercept a cross during the 34th minute of a World Cup group stage match against the United States at the Rose Bowl in Los Angeles. His outstretched leg redirected the ball past his own goalkeeper. The own goal contributed to a 2-1 defeat that, combined with an earlier loss to Romania, eliminated Colombia from the tournament they had entered as one of the favorites. Escobar, known throughout his career as the gentleman of football for his composure and sportsmanship, wrote a public letter in the Colombian newspaper El Tiempo after the team's exit, urging his countrymen to take perspective. "Life doesn't end here," he wrote. His family urged him not to return to Colombia immediately. His brother, living in the United States at the time, begged him to stay. Escobar refused. He wanted to face the reaction directly. On the night of July 2nd, 10 days after the own goal, Escobar was sitting alone in his car in the parking lot of a nightclub in Medellin when 3 men approached. They had already confronted him inside. 6 shots were fired. The gunman shouted, "Goal!" after every one of them. Escobar was pronounced dead at the hospital at the age of 27. More than 120,000 people attended his funeral. The driver who shot him, a bodyguard for the Galan brothers drug traffickers who had lost heavily betting on Colombia, received a 43-year prison sentence and was released after 11 years. One of the Galan brothers, Santiago, was himself shot dead in Mexico in February 2026, more than 30 years after the murder, the investigation that never formally concluded, still rippling forward. Flo Hyman, volleyball. On January 24th, 1986, Flo Hyman, the most dominant women's volleyball player in American history, was sitting on the bench in the second set of a club match in Matsuyama, Japan, having just been substituted off the court. She was 31 years old, playing professionally in Japan after leading the United States women's national team to a silver medal at the 1984 Los Angeles Olympics. Her teammates noticed her slumping sideways. They assumed she had fallen asleep, a joke that landed flatly because something in the way she fell did not look right. She was dead before the medical staff reached her. The cause was a ruptured aorta caused by Marfan syndrome, a genetic connective tissue disorder that affects the body's structural proteins, producing extremely tall, long-limbed physiques that in many sports reads as a physical advantage. Hyman stood 6 feet 5 inches and had a wingspan of nearly 6 feet 8. She had never been diagnosed. Marfan syndrome was not routinely screened for in elite athletes at that time. The condition weakens the wall of the aorta, the largest artery in the body, silently and over years until the pressure of physical exertion causes it to give way entirely. Hyman's death followed 2 months later by the death of Stanford basketball player Chris Patton from the same undiagnosed condition directly changed how American sports medicine approached pre-participation cardiac screening. The Flo Hyman Award has been given annually by USA Volleyball since 1987 to an athlete who demonstrates the qualities she embodied. She is still considered the blueprint against which American women's volleyball players are measured. The number of elite athletes who have since been diagnosed with Marfan syndrome, treated, and continued their careers is a direct consequence of the screening protocols her death prompted. She is possibly one of the only athletes in history whose death saved more lives than most people save in a lifetime. Jimmy Garcia boxing. On March 3rd, 1995, 23-year-old Panamanian featherweight Jimmy Garcia stepped into the ring at the MGM Grand in Las Vegas against Levander Johnson. Garcia was knocked down in the 9th round and never regained full consciousness. He died on May 19th, 1995, from injuries sustained in that fight, the third boxer to die from fight injuries in the United States that year. The year 1995 was not exceptional. Between 1998 and 2019, more than 1,800 boxers worldwide died as a direct result of injuries sustained in sanctioned bouts, according to the Association of Ringside Physicians. The number who sustained permanent neurological damage without dying is significantly higher and largely uncounted. What makes boxing's death toll structurally different from almost every other sport on this list is that the deaths in boxing are not accidents, equipment failures, or unintended consequences of a physical contact sport. The objective of boxing is to strike the opponent's head with sufficient force to impair their neurological function. The sport is designed around the delivery of the injury that kills people. Every safety improvement in boxing, better gloves, mandatory standing 8 counts ringside, physicians has reduced the rate of death without changing the mechanism. Fighters still die at a steady, predictable, recorded rate every year in bouts that were sanctioned, supervised, and legal. Garcia's death received minimal international coverage. He was not a champion. He was a 23-year-old from Panama in a co-main event at a casino ballroom in Las Vegas. His name appears in the death records of the Association of Ringside Physicians as one entry among hundreds. The sport continued its calendar the following weekend without interruption. Reggie Lewis, basketball. On July 27, 1993, Boston Celtics captain Reggie Lewis collapsed on a basketball court at Brandeis University in Waltham, Massachusetts, during an off-season shooting workout. He was 27 years old and had been the Celtics' leading scorer in the season just finished. He was not playing a game. He was shooting free throws alone with no opponent, no contact, no exertion beyond what any professional athlete performs in practice hundreds of times a year. An ambulance was called. By the time it arrived, he was already gone. Lewis had collapsed during a regular season game 4 months earlier in April, and the event had set off a medical controversy that became as widely discussed in Boston as anything that happened on the court. A team of 12 cardiologists who examined him concluded he had a life-threatening heart condition called hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, the same condition that killed Hank Gathers 3 years earlier. And they recommended he never play professional basketball again. Lewis sought a second opinion. A different cardiologist gave him a different diagnosis, neurocardiogenic syncope, a less serious condition involving fainting from abnormal nerve signals to the heart, and concluded that Lewis could return to play. Lewis chose to accept the second diagnosis. He resumed training. 3 months later, he was dead on a Brandeis court. The subsequent autopsy confirmed hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. The case became and remains a landmark in the ethics of second opinions in sports medicine. The question of what happens when an athlete's right to choose their own treatment and a physician's obligation to prevent harm point in opposite directions, and the athlete chooses the answer that gets them back on the court. Noé Pont, ski mountaineering. On February 6th, 2021, French ski mountaineer Noé Pont, 24 years old and one of the most promising competitors in the discipline, was descending from a training session on the slopes above Chamonix when he fell into a crevasse on the Mer de Glace glacier and was unable to get out. His emergency beacon was triggered, and a rescue helicopter located him within the hour. Rescuers were unable to reach him quickly enough through the technical terrain of the crevasse, where the walls narrowed below the entry point. Noé Pont died from hypothermia before the rescue team could extract him. He was found still wearing his equipment, his beacon still transmitting. The rescue team arrived to find him inside the crevasse, alive, but already too far into hypothermia for extraction to succeed in time. His coach described him the following day as the kind of athlete who made other athletes better simply by training near them. What makes Pont's death different from many mountaineering fatalities is not that it was preventable in the conventional sense, because crevasse falls in glacier terrain are not always avoidable and not always survivable, but that it was a reminder that ski mountaineering, which had just been confirmed as a sport for the 2026 Winter Olympics, for the first time operates in an environment where the difference between a training session and a fatal accident can be a single unlucky footfall on ice that looks exactly like the ice around it. Sarah Burke Superpipe skiing on January 10th, 2012. Canadian freestyle skier Sarah Burke was training in the Superpipe at Park City Mountain Resort in Utah, practicing the half-pipe runs she had become one of the world's most decorated athletes performing. Burke was 29 years old and had been instrumental in lobbying the International Olympic Committee to add women's half-pipe skiing to the Winter Olympic program, a campaign that ultimately succeeded. She would never compete in the games she helped create. During a training run, Burke fell on a routine trick, a fall that looked to those watching no worse than dozens of falls that happen in Superpipe practice on any given day. She did not get up. A helicopter airlifted her to the University of Utah Hospital, where surgeons discovered she had torn her vertebral artery in the fall, the same type of injury that had killed Australian cricketer Phil Hughes in a cricket ground in Sydney 2 years later. The brain depends entirely on uninterrupted blood flow to function, and a torn vertebral artery delivers a hemorrhagic stroke that the brain cannot survive without immediate surgical intervention. Despite 9 days of surgery in intensive care at the University of Utah Hospital, Sarah Burke died on January 19th, 2012. She had been planning to compete at the 2014 Sochi Winter Olympics. The medical bills incurred during those 9 days, which her family and coaches had committed to paying, were covered by a fundraising effort by the skiing community that raised over $200,000 in donations from thousands of people around the world who had never met her. Davide Rebellin cycling. On November 30th, 2022, 51-year-old Italian professional cyclist Davide Rebellin was on his bicycle on a road near Montebello Vicentino in northern Italy, riding home from a training session 4 days after competing in his last professional race. Rebellin had announced his retirement from professional cycling that same day, ending a career that had spawned more than 3 decades and included victories at some of the most prestigious one-day races in the sport, including the 2004 Amstel Gold Race Flèche, Wallonne, and Liège-Bastogne-Liège, in the same season a treble no other rider has ever achieved. A truck driven by a German driver struck him from behind. The driver did not stop. Rebellin was killed instantly. The truck driver was traced through surveillance footage and convicted in a German court of leaving the scene of a fatal accident. He received a suspended sentence. Rebellin had competed professionally until the age of 51, longer than almost any other elite cyclist in the modern era. He was one of only a handful of riders ever to have competed in the sport across 4 decades. The cruel irony noted in the tributes that flooded in from across the professional cycling world was that Rebellin had survived 35 years of professional racing, including some of the sport's most technically demanding and physically dangerous competitions, and died on the road 4 days into his retirement on a training ride struck from behind by a vehicle that did not stop. He had not even cleared out his racing kit. The announcement of his retirement and the announcement of his death were separated by less than 96 hours. Camille Muffat swimming. On March 9th, 2015, French Olympic champion Camille Muffat boarded a helicopter in La Rioja province in northwestern Argentina, part of a group of athletes and production crew filming a French reality television series called Dropped In, which celebrities and athletes were transported to remote locations and asked to survive and navigate their way back to civilization. Muffat was 25 years old and had won gold in the 400-meter freestyle at the 2012 London Olympics, along with a silver and a bronze in the relay events. She was considered the face of French swimming in the post-Laure Manodou era. The helicopter she was in, and a second helicopter carrying more crew and athletes, including sailing legend Florence Artaud and boxer Alexis Vastine, collided in the air shortly after takeoff in clear weather conditions. The cause of the collision was never definitively established. There were no survivors in either aircraft. All 10 people aboard both helicopters were killed. Muffat, Artaud, and Vastine died alongside 2 Argentine pilots and 5 production crew members in one of the most unusual and most sudden mass deaths of elite athletes in modern sports history. In France, the response was national mourning. The 3 athletes had all competed for France in Olympic competition and were known beyond their sports. President François Hollande spoke of a tragedy for the whole country. The reality show dropped was never aired. Its footage and all associated material were sealed by court order. The production company, Alexis Vastine's family, and the families of several crew members initiated legal proceedings over safety protocols for the aerial filming operation proceedings that remained active for years after the crash. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe for similar ones, and feel free to drop suggestions for the next video in the comments below.